Oh, welcome to the Sharpe Way Show. So happy to have you with me this evening, a little bit past 7 p.m. on the East Coast on a Friday night. Yes, I decided to do a Friday night show because I have no life. I'm kidding. I have a decent life. Well, not really. Maybe I don't have a life. And you are my life. There we go. You are my life. All of you are. So that's why I'm doing a show on a Friday night, 7 p.m. And I want to bring up something that I really do think is important, particularly because of New York. I've been talking about New York a lot recently. Obviously, I live in New York City. And that is this idea of more red light cameras. You saw this showing it last night with my amazing governor, Her Majesty Queen Kathy, bringing this up and all the ways we've been beating up cars here in New York City. And to be forward, I think across the country for sure, maybe even across the globe. And I thought, how could I have this conversation, right? I thought, I'm going to bring somebody who does know this, who's been fighting this battle for like years. He's been fighting this battle for years, dealing with all these issues. Is there actually a war on cars? I think maybe yes, but maybe I'm wrong. We'll find out. He is the executive director of policy for the National Motorists Association, the man himself, Jay Beeber. How are you, sir?
I'm great. It's a pleasure to be with you.
Yes, I'm very glad that to have you here today. And that idea of a war on cars, I think it sounds kind of like hyperbole, right? It sounds,
Yep.
But is it real or not?
Oh, it's real.
It is real. Okay, it's real. Okay,
we're done. It's real.
There we go. That was a great show, guys. Thanks for coming out. Okay, so
bye-bye.
But the question becomes though, is it locally? Like I feel it in New York City.
Yes.
Is this outside of the city or is it
everywhere? Everywhere. Some places are worse than others, but it is everywhere. And it takes a myriad of different forms. So when you say the war on cars, it's not just one thing, but the overriding umbrella is this idea that we don't want people to drive cars, that cars are bad, terrible, middle-class lifestyle is terrible, don't consume, don't do anything. Cars are a perfect example of that. They're destroying the environment. We want people to take mass transit. We want people to be on a bicycle. We want people to walk places. We don't want you to take a car. Cars are terrible.
Let me give you the obvious pushback. I know you've heard before, but I'm going to give it to you anyway.
Okay.
Isn't that a good thing? Isn't it good if we don't have cars and we ride bicycles and we walk? Isn't that better for the environment? Isn't that a good thing? Why are you so selfish, Jay? I don't know why do you hate the environment, Jay?
Yes, exactly right. I hate the planet
yes,
that I have to live on.
Yes.
So right. No. So here's the thing. Cars are one of the greatest drivers of prosperity and freedom that we have ever had in the history of the world. Think about what life used to be like before cars were invented. People never went more than a couple of miles from their home. They never experienced all the things that we can experience now. They never had the opportunities to flourish either financially or personally. People who were in disfavored minority groups, they had to rely on the government more. So the car, the personal automobile has freed up all of that. And so there are so many metrics that you could look at in terms of the different kind of jobs we can have, all of the prosperity, all of the things that have happened in our world as a result of the invention of the personal automobile. Not saying that there aren't places where maybe transit is better. Manhattan is a perfectly good example where, not saying exclusively, but, when I used to going to Manhattan and we'd take mass transit and stuff like that, but not late at night.
No, I get what you're saying, right? And I guess there is a group of people who would say, yes, I hear what you're saying, Jay, but we're destroying the planet. So what difference does it make if we destroy the planet, right? So shouldn't we all be walking so that we can have a better planet? And can't we have mass transit so that we don't need cars?
Okay, so a couple of things. First of all, I don't accept the idea that cars are destroying the planet. Okay, so that's number one. So I don't agree with the premise. So if somebody's making that argument, they have to prove it. That's number one.
Okay.
Number two is that there are always trade-offs in life, right? So we saw this with the pandemic. Okay, if everybody stays home, there's negative consequences to that. There's more, there's less prosperity. There's more domestic violence. There's all sorts of negative consequences of not being able to go out and do things. So so this idea that like, oh well, we'll just have this utopia. That's a false equivalency. There's no it's a
Aren't
false
they
choice.
saying now? How about the idea of the 15-minute city? Isn't that sounds amazing? That's my utopia, Jay. My utopia is my beautiful 15-minute city.
Right. So the utopia. So we should tell people what a 15-minute city is if they don't know. So there's a couple of different versions of this. Okay, but the nice idea. The nice idea of the 15-minute city is that, well, you'll have everything you need within 15 minutes of a walk or a bicycle ride or a transit ride, everything you could possibly need. Well, you know what? They used to call that, when my grandparents were, in Eastern Europe, a shtetl, okay? Which is people never lived, it was a tiny little town and nobody ever left, okay? And so if that's the kind of life you want, great. But just think about this is all about choices, right? So let's say I want to go to the dentist. Okay, yeah, maybe I have a dentist within 15 minutes, but I don't have all the choices of dentists that I want to go to. I get to choose which dentist
I see.
Right? Or restaurants that I want to go to. Now look, people love living in Manhattan. I'm sure there are people that are not my cup of tea. That's my choice. That's their choice. I'm not a big Manhattan live in Manhattan person, right? I don't want to have to go down to the grocery store every day and a half and buy an apple. Okay, so like I want to go to the grocery store. I want a bunch of apples in my refrigerator. So, but that's the thing about human choice, which is that I get to choose the life I want to live. You get to choose the choice, the life you want to live, and we shouldn't be telling everybody you must live like this for the good of everybody else. That's collectivism. You've talked about it many times. So it's the idea that everybody has to follow my lead because I know better than everybody else how everybody should live their life. And
but you brought up a very valid point here. And the 15-minute city, while I get the feeling, it sounds amazing, right? Sure. It's a great sounding thing. Right. But I think the point you've brought up, I think that's really hitting is now it basically forces you into a 15-minute circle that you may or may not like. And if that circle begins to change and you don't like that circle, you can't just get in your car and drive someplace else. And lastly, I think it puts you in your next spot, which is now I am beholden to monopolistic government transit that decides where and how I can get to a certain spot, whether I want to or not. And that is not talked about when it comes to 15-minute cities at all.
That is true. And the other thing that it's not talked about, and I thought you were going here, which is that who gets to decide which dentist gets to be there in that 15-minute city, right? Yep. How is that going to be decided? There's no possibility of a true free market in a arbitrarily designed or controlled 15-minute area. Okay, somebody has to be favored, and therefore somebody in power has to decide who is going to get the dentist spot, who's going to get. You can't have all of the dentists. When you can make individual choices, that dentist that's down the block or 5 miles away or 10 miles away, hey, you know what? I like the dentist that's 10 miles away. I'm willing to travel because that guy's much better. And so, but you can't possibly have that in a 15-minute city because you only, there's a limited number of resources that you can fit into a 15-minute city. You can't possibly have the number of choices. So that's the problem with this idea. And the amount of command and control that would be required to force this on people is also an incredibly, authoritarian type approach to things. And I did want to say one more thing, which is that the freedom to choose for yourself is a good into itself. That is not just like, hey, it's good to be able to choose because of something else. Human flourishing requires, the human soul requires the ability for me to be able to choose this dentist over that dentist. It seems like passe or whatever. But when all of those choices come together, the fact that I get to make all of these choices in my life, this is what releases human ingenuity. It releases human flourishing. It makes us happier and better human beings. And yes, there are always negative consequences to some things because there's always a trade-off in life. There is no such thing as no
trade-off. So we're kind of on the 15-minute city is kind of not real, and it's all about control. Got it. Yep. But hear me on this one. I got you on this one, Jay. Here I'm gonna get you.
Okay.
All right. It's speed limits. We want to slow people down. We just want things to be safer. We don't want crazy people going 100 miles an hour down school zones. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to make everything down to 20 miles an hour because I don't hate children like you clearly do. That is why I'm going to go down to 20 miles an hour.
Okay. So here's the fallacy of the 20 miles an hour or some version of that. Okay. And speed limits. The thing about speed limits is that, first of all, the number on the sign doesn't actually determine the speed that people travel on the roadway. The speed is determined by the way the roadway is built and all of the things that have to do with you driving your car, your perception of speed. Okay, so you take a roadway, government builds a roadway, you throw a bunch of people out on that roadway, and they're going to all kind of cluster around a certain speed because there's a natural speed that feels comfortable driving our modern day cars. Used to be a different speed when cars were less modern, and so so there's going to be a natural flow to the roadway. You can make an argument like saying, you know what, we don't want to build a roadway for people to go 45 miles an hour in a neighborhood. Okay, that's a reasonable argument. Okay, that's not an unreasonable argument. But when the government builds a roadway for somebody to go 45 miles an hour and then slaps 25 or 30 miles an hour on it, and then tickets everybody using automated enforcement for doing exactly what the government built the road to do, that's wrong. That's the government being a bully. And that's the government entrapping you.
Got it. Wow. All right. I'm going to do a couple comments real fast. You got Leela. Leela says, your guest today is quite interesting. So I guess Leela likes you. You got one fan at least. Just one. There we go.
Thanks, Leela.
Joseph, thank you for being a member, my friend. 15-minute city is super scary.
Yes.
Yeah.
It is.
But it sounds nice.
Well, doesn't Utopia always sound nice? Doesn't
the
authoritarians that want to control your life always make it sound nice? No, just give up all your freedom, and you'll be safe and you'll be happy and you won't never need anything and we'll take care of you.
Ask the Native Americans how that worked out for them.
Exactly right.
Did not work out so well for them. Yes, right. Absolutely. Sarah says, wow, 500 shows. Well done. I now have a good 200 plus to catch up. Yes, this is my 500th Sharpe Way show. That's correct. My 500 Sharpe Way show.
I'm honored.
Yes. I have done 500 Sharpe Way shows, 200 and I think 21 Sharpe Way radios, and 135 Libertarian Chicken Coffee Live, and 59 the Sharpe Club. That might be it. And that's all. It's about 500 total.
Monster. You just keep going and going and going.
They try to stop me, but I just don't do it. Mike says 500 is a big milestone. Glad to see it live. Thank you, my friend. I do appreciate that. Yes, absolutely. Kim, thank you for being a member. She says, hello, everyone. Smash that like button. Al Gore Rhythm, he knows you're here. That's correct. Pinkerbell also being a member. She says that song is banging. Thank you. The name of the song is Rise by Encephalon. It's actually a Canadian group. And I do have permission to use that song. So if you want to listen to that song, please enjoy. I like the idea of rising. That's why I said it. That was the reason why I picked it. So Dan is not your friend. Dan says car-centric infrastructure is ridiculously inefficient and environmentally destructive compared to walking, biking, mass transit. Let's return public spaces to people rather than being dominated by personal automobiles. And let me touch on top of that. That is a very common thought process here in New York City. Dan is not alone. It's very popular. And in fact, you've probably seen this in New York City. We put bike lanes everywhere.
Right.
Even when the people locally say, please do not put, people go to the public square and yell and scream, don't do it. City does not care to do it anyway. And we have closed down streets and just made them places for people to sit. That happens all throughout Manhattan.
Right.
It feels, again, I'm doing my feels. I'm in my feels right now. It feels what Dan is saying is true. It does feel right. However, what I've seen is a lot of unhappy New Yorkers.
Right. It doesn't work.
What is your view on this?
Let me say this. There is a reasonable balance between being able to get around using different modes of transportation. We're talking about Manhattan here, and Manhattan is almost a completely unique situation in the United States, right? So, yep. I mean, there's very few places that are much like Manhattan. And so, I mean, you go out onto Long Island, it's not Manhattan. It's a completely different thing. Correct. You can't make the same argument, okay, there. So it's still one of the 5 boroughs. So, but let me actually make a comment about the term that he used, which is this term car-centric, okay? So this is used as a pejorative, okay? And here's what I say about this. We no more have a car-centric society than we have a cell phone-centric society, than we have a computer-centric society, than we have a TV-centric society. People use cars because they are a benefit and they're a useful tool. It's not like there's some like great philosophy about cars, like that like we just want to think about cars all day long. Right? People use cars just like they use computers, just like they use cell phones, because they're useful. They're a useful tool for doing A, B, or C. And so this whole idea of like car-centric is kind of like a silly argument. I mean, it's like you can say, hey, I'd rather have this as opposed to that. But to use this term car-centric is like, well, I'm just going to use this term because it sounds nasty and it sounds like it's a bad thing. Like the policy arguments are, reasonable to have. I mean, Manhattan can decide, and the folks in Manhattan can decide what they want. Do they want to close down all these streets? Do they want to have the throughput? Do they want to have the ability to move a vehicle? Because here's the thing. People go into Manhattan. I used to live in New Jersey. Okay, it's where I grew up. Okay, people don't drive into Manhattan unless you have to. Okay?
Right. Yes.
Yes. It's not like we're going out for a Sunday drive. I'm going to drive around Manhattan.
Like, yeah, no. Okay, I used to drive a truck in Manhattan. I know how crazy it is. Yes.
Exactly.
Yes.
So if you drive into Manhattan, then you're doing it for a reason, for a purpose, for whether it's an economic purpose, for sure. An entertainment purpose, whatever it is. So, and then there's different choices as to how to do that. Sometimes, when I lived right outside the city in Rutherford, I would take the bus in, and I would go through Port Authority, and I would get where I needed to go. And I think I joked about this, but not if I had to be there late night because it wasn't safe to do so. I would drive. So I would, if I had to be there late at night, I would drive in. But that's all of the choices that we make. And to say, no, you can't have this choice. And especially, and I'll really say this, is like, this is especially true for women. Like I'm not the biggest guy in the world, but I mean, I more care about like, hey, if there's a woman who's out there who, has to take mass transit or whatever, and it's not safe for them, and they'd rather drive, that's something you should be concerned about. Certainly we should clean up the crime, but I'm just saying, like there's benefits to, there's a lot of different benefits along the way to using a car and to having access to a car. And I will also tell you that there's a study out of UCLA, and not a particularly right-wing institution, that says that if you want to get people out of poverty and they don't have a car, one of the best things you can do is get them a car and get them the ability to have a car. And towards the other argument about this, which is that it's almost impossible in most parts of the country, again, Manhattan is a little bit different, to build out enough transit that you could reach the number of jobs and the number of opportunities that you can reach with a personal automobile. You can reach many, many, many times more more jobs with a car than you can with than on transit. And again, the study was done in LA where I used to live. And the argument was, we should build out enough transit so people don't have to take cars. Okay, you can't build out enough transit. Impossible. You'd have to bankrupt the entire area. You have to spend money on nothing else for the next 40 years. Okay. And again, that doesn't mean you shouldn't put in a transit line here or do this or that or whatever. Not saying that. Okay. I'm just saying this argument that, we should have transit instead.
Yes.
The car will be replaced when something that is better and more efficient comes along and takes its place, just like the horse and buggy was replaced by the car. And quite frankly, bicycles were replaced by the car.
Let me go to, I think, which is a big deal. It feels like there's a war on cars, right? So, and you've said that the goal is to make driving basically miserable, right? And Mike asked a question. I think it's an important one. Is it about the cars? Is it about climate change? Is it about the 50-minute cities? Why? Why do people care whether or not we're driving or not, right? Do people think you're just wrong and it is the environment and you're wrong and the environment is going to kill us all? Or is there some other thing behind this that we don't know? Why are so many people fighting against cars?
I think there's a couple of things. And there's, for want of a better word, there's this Venn diagram of
okay.
of different, overlapping interests, right? So, but I think the overlying umbrella of it is that it's kind of people that hate freedom. Okay, it's hate. They hate the fact that you have personal choice in your life. They believe that look, I think we all know people like this, that they believe that the best thing is for there to be this collectivist type control over everything, and freedom within that is not a good thing. It's better for everybody if everybody complies. If every resistance is futile. You must be part of the collective. And so if you push back against that, like using your personal automobile to go where you want, when you want, how you want, that's not a good thing. So and also they also see the personal automobile as something akin to like destroying the planet or destroying their utopia, which is they don't like suburbs. Like this whole thing about I don't like suburbs for some reason, because God forbid somebody should live in a house with a lawn and a garage and let their kids play in the backyard or the front yard or something like that. I mean, like this is this idea that everybody has to live for the good of society in this kind of urban hellscape where that's the only thing you do in a 15-minute city or whatever. I'm sorry, that's not the world I want to live in, right? I would like to live in a world where we have more freedom, not less freedom.
Let me talk to my audience for a second. Guys, if you like what you're hearing, then do me a favor, click that button known as like, hit it with any appendage you want, nose, ears, eyes, anything. I'm not watching. I don't care. As long as you click that button, that's what matters. If you're watching this on Twitter or Facebook, please share this, repost this. It really does matter. Please do so. If you are on either Facebook or on Twitter, please follow me. If you're on YouTube, you have to subscribe. If you don't subscribe, you hate children. That's basically what it is. So you must subscribe or you hate children. So please do that if you haven't already. You can super chat me if you want to get your chat to the front. I appreciate it. Or become a member if you like. Click that join button on either Sharpe Way, or you can do it on Louder Sharpe. Doesn't matter. Either one of those. $4.99 per month keeps me going as long as I possibly can. 500 shows already, and I keep going no matter what you do. You've been trying to stop me, but I keep going. It does not work. No matter what you do, though, my friends, please follow Jay. If you can, follow him on Twitter /X at motorists with an S. Or on the web, check him out at motorists.org.org. Check him out if you would. I do want to, if I can, bring up Blue Black Boss. Thank you for becoming a member. Can't wait to dive into this topic of conversation. I work in the auto industry, so I take this issue very seriously. And he also brought up a specific question that I want to bring up here too. Okay. He says, my question is, why is the auto industry trying to fit into a corporate structure when it was never made to be that way in the first place? It's an industry, not a corporation. Do you have a view about this?
I tend to not have views on things that I don't know that much about. I have an opinion. How about that? Which is that, unfortunately, in the structure that we have in our society right now, you've got the government, and then everybody has to kind of cozy up to the government and what the government wants and that sort of thing. So I think that the corporations out there, and we're seeing it not just in the auto industry, but in many industries, is, they don't want to rock the boat. They can come down on them with regulations and all sorts of things. I would really love for folks in the auto industry, whether it's the individual folks or the corporations themselves or the industry itself, to take these threats more seriously. We try to talk to some folks in the industry. Sometimes, we get responses. They're a little myopic on just, oh, it's just this issue or it's just that issue.
Right.
But if we destroy the ability to use our personal automobiles, that's an entire industry that's going away, and that is not good for our economy or for the folks in that industry. And especially since it would go away artificially, because it would be the government cramming something down on us. Look, when the blacksmith industry went away, when horses were replaced by cars, that's just the natural occurrence and the natural destruction of the market. But when the government comes in and forces it to happen, that's not a good thing.
So, Joseph, thank you for being a member, my friend. He says, cars equals freedom. I think he's on your side here. Love my road trips in so many countries. Way prefer to drive than fly, train travel, etc. And had a nasty bike accident in Central Park years ago, so no bikes for me. So I think he's on your side here. But I think I want to go to one part, and this is a part that people don't talk about. Cars may not equal freedom if they put in those kill switches in our cars and they make everyone have to buy an EV. If everyone has, and again, to be very forward to anybody, I don't care if you buy an EV, you buy whatever you want. I don't care at all, right? But as you always know, I'm always against mandates. I'm always against mandates, but mandating EVs, and then in every EV is going to be that kill switch. So, Jay, you've been talking some trash. You can't drive anymore, right? You got to go. So it might not be free.
Yes, it may not be free. And we should also expand that conversation to automated vehicles as well. So, because
go ahead.
Control people. So whether it's a kill switch or whether it's an automated vehicle, EVs have their own issues. I want to be really clear. National Motorists Association is not against EVs. We're against mandates, just like you are. Awesome. We are agnostic as to what kind of car you drive. We just don't want it crammed onto everybody. But here's the problem with automated vehicles. Automated vehicles have a lot of promise in terms of safety things, in terms of allowing people more freedom and more ability who can't actually currently drive a car, but they can get into one of these things. The question is, who's going to control the car, and how is it going to be controlled? And that's really, I always worry about, what is the government going to do? So, because think about this, it's so much easier to control the vehicle than it is to control the human, right? So you cannot build a automated vehicle that breaks the law. It just won't happen. Okay, so all you have to do then is just sort of change the law or monkey around with the law or have a regulation or whatever. So you can control people by controlling their means of transportation. And so,
but hold on. If we're talking not mandates, though, why do we care, right? Because now I have the choice. I can go into the self-driving car if I want to, or I can take a regular Uber or take my own car.
But
go ahead, please.
Okay, so here's the thing. What happens when self-driving cars, assuming we ever get to that point, are seen as safer? Okay. Now you can't drive because it's not safe. Human beings are not safe behind the wheel. It's much safer. Everybody must have an automated vehicle. Okay. So let's just say, for the sake of argument, I don't know, some crazy thing happens. There's a pandemic. The government decides, you know what? Nobody should go to work. Nobody should go to church. Nobody should go to.
That would never happen, Jay. It just did.
I know that would never happen.
Sorry, it just happened.
Yes. But I know this is far-fetched, but let's just say they said, okay, you know what? Tomorrow, nobody can go downtown. Your car will not go there. Okay. So, you won't get a bunch of truckers lined up anywhere because those truckers, their vehicles won't go anywhere because because you can control the machine, not the person. And it's the same thing with speed limits or any of these other regulations. If you want cars to go as slow as possible, pass a law that says cars can't go more than 15 miles an hour, and every car has to comply with it, no matter how ridiculous the rule or the law is. So that's
it's a valid point, because I was thinking for a moment as I walked down that road in my head, I was thinking, well, if it's private companies, it won't be that bad, but the private companies still have to follow the law. So it doesn't matter if the law will still affect the private companies anyway.
Right. And what are the private companies that are going to control these? And here's the other thing. To be really honest, they don't want you to own an automated vehicle. They want them to own the automated vehicle, and then you be beholden to their service for it. But let's take that at the next step, which is, look, we've got the Googles of the world, you've got all these tech companies. They may not like your choices. They may not like where you go. They certainly may not like what you're saying online. You know, we've seen that if they don't like what you're saying online, they'll just shut you down, right? Okay.
Yep.
So, or you know, they don't like where you're going. They don't like what you're buying. Nope, we're not going to take you there. Nope, we're not doing it. And their car, their company, they can choose, right? I mean,
right.
So I think the concern for us is in the brave new world in which we're headed towards is the loss of freedom. I think that's sort of the generalized thing here, which is human freedom is important to be able to make your own choices in life. And the more and more and more we have of this kind of stuff, the less choices you're going to have and the less freedom you're going to have. And that's where we're sort of sounding the alarm. And always it's in pursuit of a utopia or a nice place to live or more safety or, you know, whatever, you know, fill in the blank.
All right. So there's some safety issues for sure. We do care about safety, obviously. So I'm going to give you one that's obvious, right? I got you on this. You've been beating me on all of these, but this one I'm going to get you on. Jay. This one I'm going to get you. Okay. Red light cameras. Red light cameras, clearly, if you don't run the red light, then you don't pay the fine. Clearly, this is a good deal, right? Or why do you hate children? I'll go back to that one again. Whatever.
So speaking of which, you know why New York City got red light cameras in originally? Somebody ran a red light and hit somebody pushing a baby in a stroller. And that was in the 90s. Okay.
Yep.
And that's
94 is when they came in.
Yeah. Right. So now that child thankfully survived. Okay. But that was the clarion call of like, you know, if we just put these cameras in, that will never happen again. And as we've seen, there has never been another red light running collision or fatality or anything in New York City.
Never, ever.
Right.
Ever, never. Not one, except every year. Except every year, never.
Right. Exactly. Because here's the fallacy of red light cameras. Number one, the types of violations that actually cause the dangerous collisions that are the catastrophic collisions that actually harm people. Those types of violations happen way after the light is red. So you know, there's people in the crosswalk, there's all that kind of stuff. Okay. That generally happens for people who don't know the light is red. So they're distracted, they're fatigued, they're impaired, whatever. They're
drunk.
Okay? Right. Drunk. Exactly. I use the word impaired. Use the word drunk.
Impaired. It may not be booze. You're right. Impaired.
I was expanding it out to all the other types.
Yours was better. I like yours. Impaired.
Right.
Okay.
So I just don't want to pick on people who drink. So the problem with this is that a red light camera is never going to stop a person who doesn't know the light is red.
Correct.
Right? It's never going to happen. Okay. So you can't stop those. Okay. So you just take those off the table, right? You know, right away. Cameras cannot stop this. Okay. Where the cameras make their money and where the companies make their money and where the city makes thear money is in this little
money.
area.
I thought it was about safety. Hold on, Jay. What?
Right.
Are you telling me government wants money? What?
I know, it's shocking. It's shocking that there is gambling going on in the back room. I know, I'm shocked. So here's the thing. Red light cameras and other forms of automated enforcement exploit the imperfection in our engineering of intersections, of traffic lights, all this stuff. And you can't be perfect. Okay, because here's why. There's too many things that go into it, and there's too many different types of people. Again, if you have an automated vehicle can comply 100% of the time. Not a problem, okay? But in terms of whether or not somebody goes through a red light, there's a lot of factors that go into it. Not all of it is just willful and, hey, I just didn't want to stop. That's not how it works. And the reason we know this, okay, is because if you extend the yellow light and you make it longer, I don't mean make it 10 or 15 seconds long. I'm saying you go from 4 seconds to 4.5 seconds, basically the blink of an eye, okay? A lot of places you'll see that the violations will go down by like 80-90%, and they don't come back.
Wow.
So what does that tell you? It tells you that there was some flaw in there, okay, that extra yellow time, and I can explain it, it's a little too wonky, probably don't want to get into it in this conversation, but there's a reason why that because it's imperfect in terms of setting a yellow light, you want to set a yellow light that's long enough so you take into account for some of these things. It's called engineering tolerance. And so it's just like if you build a bridge, right? There's this beautiful new Cuomo bridge, right? Okay, they built that bridge.
Ooh,
okay?
Ooh. Yes, you're right.
Right?
The boo.
So they
I'm
built
booing
this
the
bridge,
name.
right?
I'm booing the name. The bridge is fine.
Okay, they didn't build this bridge at exactly what they thought the weight limit needed to be. They built the bridge with tolerance, which is extra, just in case, okay? This is what we need to do with our yellow light times, which is we have to build in extra just in case. And the extra is basically imperceptible to the basic human being. But what it does is it washes out a lot of the violations that are caused by just, mistakes, bad choices, just like
yeah,
I thought I could go.
But then I don't get my cash. And that's my problem, Jay. I don't get paid then.
Okay. And so here's how we know it's all about the money. Okay. Number one, when they put these things in, they say it's about safety. And here's the other thing they always say, they will say this every single time. We hope we never have to issue a ticket ever, that behavior changes and we never issue anything. We hope we make no money on this. Okay.
Right.
And then what happens when they don't make the money? They cancel the program.
Yes.
Right?
Exactly. Yes.
So
yes.
that's number one. And I'll give you another example. So in Oakland, California, they had a red light camera program, and the engineers increased the yellow light time by 1 second. Okay, again, not that long. Think about how quickly 1 second goes by. Not something that generally people can perceive. Okay, violations plummeted, and some collisions went away. Right. So you look at that, you think that's a good thing, right? Well, less red light running. That's what you want the program to do, right? Okay.
Correct.
Well, the police department came back to them, and we have the emails, and they said, what are you doing? Your signal timing change is now impairing our ability to run this program, because we had dedicated a certain amount of resources to this, and now we're not making the money on it. Now, they didn't say we're not making the money on it, but basically that's the underlying thing. So they forced them to roll it back, and of course all the violations came back again. So
of course,
right. And then eventually the people rose up and got rid of it, which is what they should do in New York City, by the way. Anybody who's listening, okay, rise up peacefully, okay, and make sure that these people who are pushing all these things and all of these new cameras that are going to show up, you can stop these things. I got rid of the red light cameras in Los Angeles, okay?
I remember it's what, 10, 15 years ago?
Yes, it was 2011 that they were.
Here we go. Yep.
Okay. So now I'm not saying I did it all on my own and nobody, but I was the driving force for that. Okay. And not because I'm some brilliant and wonderful person. I just made good arguments, and I talked to people, and I let people know that, that this was a problem. Okay. And by the way, those tickets were $500 a piece. So yeah.
Wow.
$500 for a slow rolling right turn, just because somebody's wheels didn't stop turning at 2:00 in the morning somewhere. Okay. And 75% of the tickets were issued for slow rolling right turns. So,
wow.
Anyway, so there's ways to get rid of these things. The elected officials have to know that the people don't want this. Okay. I'm sure there are some people who, the somebody's getting away with something crowd.
We got a lot of those in New York. We got a lot of those.
We got a lot of those,
yes.
right? That's
how dare you have fun? You don't get to have
someone
fun.
Is getting away with something. We got to stop that. But here's the, and I want to really be clear about this. I'm not saying that no one ever is a bad driver and runs a red light and should have stopped and put somebody in. I'm not saying that doesn't happen. If you only ticket those people, you cannot make money on these systems. You can only make money on these systems if you have an unfair yellow light time and if you ticket for like Mickey Mouse violations. That's the only way you can make money on these things. And if you're making millions of dollars, that guarantees you that the system is set up for you to fail.
Yes. And New York City makes in profit over $20 million a year.
Exactly.
And what it has
but
now.
It's all, Larry, it's all about the safety. It's about saving children.
Yeah. Right. We have about 150 right now cameras that,
and you get more.
Another 100, 250 maybe, give or take. Now you add another 100 from our failed congestion pricing. Right. So we get about that. We make about $20 million in profit off of that. We used to make more, Profits are down, to your point. We used to make over 40. Now we're down to 20. So they said, what we're going to do? Oh, add 450 more cameras.
Exactly. Right.
So now we can go from 20
you
million
got to keep
to
the
60 or
casino
70
going.
million. You got to keep it going. Absolutely.
You
Yes.
got to keep it going. And
100%.
And here's the thing. It's like, if you think about this, and a friend of mine who does YouTube videos on traffic engineering, and he did a series of these, and this is what he said. This is like, the red light cameras are like are like these dating sites, right? So like, if you get onto this dating site and they sign you up, right? If they're successful and you find somebody, they lose your money because, right? So if they're successful in getting rid of all the violations, then they don't make the money anymore. They have to keep churning. They have to keep churning tickets. So they have to keep finding ways to do this. And so this is, so this is a problem. And people should really recognize this is about the money. This is about, and it's not just about the money that the city's making. It's about the money that the red light camera companies and the bus camera companies are making, and all of this kind of stuff. And these people lobby. They take your money. Okay, usually for some Mickey Mouse violation, they take your money and then they use it to lobby against you to put in more cameras and take more of your money. This is why people should rise up and say, no more. I'm not going to not vote for people who are going to do this. And maybe they'll kick this mayor out, but maybe they'll kick the governor out, and maybe somebody else will run for governor that has a different idea. You never know.
Maybe somebody might. You're just saying, maybe somebody might. I don't know. Yes.
When people are tired of this, vote for Larry.
Yes, that's what I'm saying. Right. Snork, thank you for being a member. Snork says, Iowa just banned speed cameras. There we go. I didn't know that.
Yes, there was a, I forget the specifics of it, but the way that it's set up in Iowa is they have to approve where they are, the state, and then they just decided we're not approving in a whole bunch of places. There may be one or two places left over, but for the most part, they pushed them off, off the streets. And, a lot of other places have. Look, there used to be, when I got started in California, when I was living there used to be over 109 red light camera programs in the state of California. There's now 26.
Okay. There we go.
It can be done.
There we go. So, Kim, I think she's teasing. She says, if you don't have a car, you won't be running red lights. Settle down, guys. They're trying to help you not get violations. See, they care about you.
That's so funny. I was about to say, as we were just talking before, that part of the thing is not just about making the money, because of course they want the money and they know they'll keep getting it, but also to make the environment so hostile that you won't drive a car, because they don't want you to drive a car in Manhattan. I mean,
right.
I mean, it's stated. It's not like they're hiding the ball here, right?
100%.
So they don't want you.
That's the one thing I like about Bill de Blasio, right? The one thing I bring about Bill de Blasio, who was a terrible mayor. Bill de Blasio was a terrible mayor. But there's one thing I always give him credit for. He was honest. He was like, I'm a socialist. What I want to redistribute wealth. I don't want you driving cars in Manhattan. Please stop driving cars. Get out. I hate cars. Right. That much I'll say.
As someone else once said, don't come. So,
yes. And he was that way. He was open. Absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, he had garbage policies, but at least he was honest about that.
You knew what you were getting, and they still voted for him.
It's amazing to me. What I have to say, look, I'm from, originally from New Jersey, so I spent a lot of time in Manhattan, and I'm just amazed at the stuff that the folks in Manhattan will put up with. It's crazy. I'm just amazed by it.
Absolutely.
And I said this about California, which is why I left, which is that I kept saying it's going to get so bad, people are going to adjust course, right? Like they're going to vote for different people. They're going to doesn't have to be a different party. They're just different people.
Those people move.
Right. That's what I did.
They leave. Yes, they don't stay to change. Right. I'm the idiot who stays to change. Everybody else just packs up and leaves.
That's right. Most people go to Florida. They go to Texas. Whatever. I went to Arizona because But I mean, it's like there's a point at which you're like, they're not correcting course. Like people are still voting for this stuff. I don't understand it, but maybe people are just trying to keep their heads down and get by day to day, and try to take care of their families, and But
the AC says I'm not sure where you're going with this one, AC. Do you think that being able to poison the water supply is about freedom? I'm not sure. I assume where you're going with. Tell me if I'm wrong on this. You can put it back out. By the way, thank you for being a member. Are you saying that is someone saying harming others is about freedom? And I would, again, Jay, please, your view. My view is if I'm not harming somebody else, yes. If I am harming someone else, no. With that in mind, though, and if any of you care, I did a session in Freedom Fest, which, by the way, Jay was there also this year. And Freedom Fest, me, Cornell West, and Maj Toure all together on stage. You can see it if you want to. It's on YouTube. Talking about the difference between freedom from versus freedom to, and how you have to have that balance. If you don't, you have craziness. So there is clearly a balance. I don't know, Jay. Tell me what you think.
Well, here's the thing, and again, I'm not exactly sure what the person was referring to exactly, but we'll just take it this way, which is that this is always an interesting argument, especially from the libertarian standpoint, which is if you don't harm somebody else, you're free to do what you want, right? I mean, for the most part, somebody shouldn't, as long as you don't harm somebody. The question is, where do you draw the line in harm, and how do you define that, right? Because anything could theoretically be considered harm, right? Like, I mean, if people will say, you get in your car, there's emissions out of your car, you're harming the environment, therefore I get to tell you not to do that because you're harming me. In my view, there's always a certain amount of trade-offs. And if you, and so the harm that you have to be talking about is direct harm. Like, I am directly harming. I am directly taking your wallet. I'm directly physically assaulting you, right? So if I come and I just say something that makes you feel bad, yeah, am I harming you? Yeah, I guess I am harming you. But is that enough for you to impair my freedom of free speech or whatever it is? So, and here's the thing, we're never going to come to a point where we all agree on where that line is. We just have to try to be reasonable about it.
Okay. AC goes on to say, I'm talking about the rich realizing they don't need as many of us as they once did. Before, they wanted us to work in their factories and farms and buy their products. Now they have robots and financial instruments. There's a valid worry there. I think there is, right? I think as you see more and more automation in general, you always do worry about people losing jobs, and that can be temporary or that could be long-term. There's always going to be some pain. And I do think when it comes to, particularly in America, I think our financial sector is far larger than it should be. There are far too many people making money on moving money versus actually doing something. And I think the examples you can give is, you look at GE, when everyone said Jack Welch was so great. He was making money on financing. He wasn't making money on making washing machines, right? And I think that is kind of a big deal. So, yeah, just bring that piece up. I don't know. Jay, you feeling that?
No, it's not my area. I just said the only question I would ask is, who gets to decide?
Yes.
Like, who gets to decide what's too much? I mean, I always prefer that the market and individual choices work those things out to the extent, again, as long as people are not cheating other people directly or whatever, I don't care how many financial people there are, quite frankly.
So let me move on to the other part I was bringing up, which is Lorenzo brings a very important piece, which I also want to talk about. It seems like New York City is trying to mimic a European city where it's less reliance on cars, transportation, walking and biking. You said this is worldwide. So is the rest of the world seeing success? Is the rest of the world seeing failure? Like, why are we jumping on that? Is there some success that we're missing somewhere?
In my estimation, no, but we have to be careful about what we're comparing, right? Because again, and I'll go back to this, I think this is really important. Manhattan is, to some extent, similar to some European cities. Okay.
True.
LA is not. Okay.
Right.
Chicago really is not. Okay. There may be a little downtown area, but we're okay. So, and this is the thing, is like a lot of folks will go and be like, Copenhagen. We're like, I love Copenhagen. It's great. It's like, okay, it's a mile. Okay. And you don't have to go too far, and there's not too much else, around it and whatever. And people do use cars there, but it's like, you can get across there biking or whatever. Okay. LA is, dozens, hundreds of miles. Manhattan, I don't know how long it is from top to bottom, but you can probably walk across, from the East River to the Hudson River.
Manhattan is literally it is literally the smallest county in New York State. It's tiny.
Right. Right, exactly. So you got to be careful about like what you're saying and what you're comparing. There's no one right answer. But here's the thing: in terms of Manhattan, I think in terms of the National Motorists Association and our concerns about Manhattan, it's the oppressive nature of not wanting to ever have a car in that area. People, we have to coexist, and like I said before, people have a car in Manhattan, downtown Manhattan, whatever, for a reason. Okay, nobody does it just on a whim. So we have to take that into account, and we have to accommodate that, because the opposite of that is whatever that usefulness is of the car in Manhattan cannot happen. So
Right.
that's
Right.
why we have to be reasonable about these things.
Well, Matt brings up another piece, which makes me think why I think a lot of companies want to get involved in this, right? Matt is a member, also. Thank you, Matt, for being a member. He says, the only thing I worry about with cars is if the government mandates all electric cars, because electric cars means someone's going to be collecting all your driving data and lets them charge subscriptions for anything. You want heated seats, $5 a month. Radio, $5 a month, etc. Now,
you don't need an
electric car or not. What? I mean,
you don't need an electric car for that. It's already happening. Already happening. Yep.
Yes.
Your car is, if you have a newer car, I just bought a newer car. It's connected to the internet. You have to opt out of all these things. The amount of data that your car is collecting on you, and all the subscription things that they want to charge you for or whatever, hopefully people will push back against that. But, it's amazing how much they collect your speed, how hard you brake, how hard you accelerate, what time of day you're traveling, where you're traveling, all of this stuff. They collect all of this information, and then they sell it to a data broker, who then chops it up and sells it to your insurance company and whoever else wants your data. And
political candidates.
Okay, it's not anonymous. It's actually your with your name on it. Okay, and so they know how to market to you and whatever else. Okay, and we need more protections with regards to at least letting people know what's being collected and having them easily opt out. Our preference is at the National Motorists Association that you get to opt into these things, not that you have to opt out.
Oh, got it. Much better, right? So that automatically. Yeah. It makes sense. So hold on. Let me Dan brought up some issues. He wants to give you some details.
Okay.
If I can. Dan says road travel accounts for 3/4 of transport emissions. Okay. Most of this comes from passenger vehicles, cars and buses, contributing 45.1%. The other 29.4% comes from trucks carrying freight. And he puts his source is ourworldindata.org. I think he has one more thing to say. I want to make sure he gets his stuff out. Thank you, Dan, for writing. I appreciate what you're that you care enough to say these things. I do appreciate this. I'm not teasing, and I'm very happy that you care. He says the physical infrastructure in the U.S. is made to center our homes, our businesses, our schools, etc., around automobiles. It's not a pejorative as much as a reality. If you go around the U.S., we're forced by the government to use cars in almost all situations. It's the opposite of freedom of choice. It's often illegal or too dangerous to travel any city other way than automobiles, the way things are designed. Okay, that's his argument. So right. I want to make sure you got his argument out.
Okay, it sounds like Dan thinks that there is some overall, that there's this overall government thing that's forcing everybody to do X, Y, Z. I don't want to put words in his mouth, but that's what it sounds like, okay? The reason that we have, in a lot of places, the infrastructure for cars is because it's the most efficient way to get around, okay? As we said before, you cannot access, no matter how much transit you build, the same amount of freedom and the same amount of choices that you can with a personal automobile. It's just a fact. That's why when the personal automobile was invented, unless you wish that it would never invented and that we didn't have all the human flourishing and prosperity that comes from that, there's tons of the great things that came from cars. So unless you wish we could eliminate all of those wonderful things, that the consequence of that is that people are going to use, hopefully, the most efficient thing. We're not in favor of government subsidies for whoever. I know there's all this argument that roads are subsidized or whatever, but everybody benefits. Like, I mean, if you get a TV delivered, even if you never get in a car and drive anywhere, okay, you're benefiting from the roads. So, I mean, it's not, that argument doesn't really fly either. But I'm just saying that when you have a lot of people making individual choices, then those individual choices are, after World War II, people could start affording cars, and a lot of people got cars, and that was an efficient way. It was a better way. And I will say one other thing in terms of LA, which I'm really familiar with, is that the reason that LA is spread out the way that it is because of transit. It's not because of the car. Okay, most people don't know this. So there are these transit lines that were built by real estate developers, and there was the red line and the yellow line and all these other lines, and they were built to access areas where people could not access for cheap land. They bought up all the land. They then put in these transit lines before cars were ubiquitous, and then they sold off the land in developments. They developed the land and they sold that off. And
if you see some of the old movies, you see everybody in LA getting on buses.
Right. Exactly. Yep. So people think like, oh, well, the car is the thing that's like not in LA because the way LA is built out the way it is. Now, the car then came and took over from that because it was more efficient. And there's a lot of other reasons why, because the government also mandated that they couldn't charge enough for the transit. So the
government got involved and made things worse. That's never happened before.
I know it's surprising to hear. I know this is shocking, but the government actually did something that made things worse. So
what?
I know it's surprising, but that's what I'm saying. It's like so this idea that like it's like this giant conspiracy for everybody to use a car. Like it's just the way things worked out and how things built up, and we industrialized at the time that the car was invented, and like it's again, but the car is still one of the greatest inventions ever. It's not like, yes, there are downsides. I completely agree with anybody who claims there are downsides to cars. There are downsides to everything in life. So there are downsides to swimming pools. Okay, people drown in them. Okay, there are downsides to ladders. Okay, people fall off them. I've done it myself and broke 11 ribs. Okay, so there are downsides to everything, but there are useful tools out there, and we just have to be careful with them.
So I want to tell my audience again, guys, if you are like what we're saying, then click the button that is known as like. Don't be stingy. Likes are free. Don't be stingy. Do that. So is reposting, so sharing, also free. Don't be stingy. Please do that. So subscribing and following. These are all things that are free. Don't be stingy. Do me a favor. Click those buttons. Do the sharing. Now, if you don't want to be stingy, and you want to be nice to me, you can always super chat me. Super chat me if you want to. Happy to have that. They go right to the front. Also, if you're not a member, you can become a member on either Sharpe Way or on Larry Sharpe. Click that join button to keep us rocking and rolling. But no matter what you decide to do, please follow Jay, if you would. Follow him on Twitter/X at Motorists. That's S at the end. Or check out what he's doing on the web at motorists.org, not .com, .org, if you would do that. Now, I do have an interesting one. The AC says one thing. He says, counterpoint, robo-taxis won't give cops an excuse to pull them over and search them. There's a bright light to everything, right? There's a silver lining.
Well, they'll find a way.
They'll find a. That's true. They will find a way.
I know. I guess it won't do. Like, really, you think that they won't? Really, you think that the government won't figure out a way to do it and curtail your freedoms? I'm sorry, I haven't seen it in the past. So.
Yeah, there we go. Yes, the AC goes on to say, "Red light cameras are stupid and authoritarian." Yes.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thumbs up.
He's not wrong on that. Yes, he's not wrong on that. Absolutely, he's not wrong. So I do want to move, if I could, to one more piece. Tell me what a road diet is.
Okay. So a road diet is a road that's too fat. Okay. No, the road diet is a road that has, in some people's idea, has too many lanes. Okay. So they take lanes. Too many lanes. A road diet is, instead of expanding a roadway, you take away the car lanes. I'm sure, is it Dan? We'll have a comment about this. But the problem. So
they do it in New York all the time.
Right. Exactly. So what you're doing is you're curtailing the ability to use a personal automobile. Okay. Now you may want that. That may be the goal. But understand there are consequences to this. So if I take away car lanes on this road, okay, then where are the cars going to go? They got to go somewhere else, maybe, or it backs up traffic, and there's more emissions. Okay, so these things don't happen in a vacuum, And what I like to say is that traffic, like water, it seeks its own level, right? So it's got to go somewhere, okay? Because if you have basically the same amount of people. Now, a lot of people say, well, if you take away the car lanes, people will use another form of transportation. Well, if they could have and it was more convenient, they would have, okay? Because people make generally, not always, generally rational decisions, right? So for whatever reason, they're choosing a car. And if they didn't have to choose a car, they choose something else. And if you take away the infrastructure for that car, now you've impaired something. Okay. I mean, again, these are all things you have to look in, all the little minutiae, because it's a cascade of things. But that's what a road diet is. Now, the euphemism for road diets is roadway reconfigurations. Okay, so you hear roadway.
Ooh, that sounds way better.
It sounds.
I like that.
To reconfigure the roadway, it means we're taking away car lanes and we're taking away half the infrastructure that cars use and giving it over to bicycles. Now, this is not necessarily Manhattan, but in many places where they do that, nobody ever uses the bike lanes, right?
Yes.
So, my wife and I call the bike riders in these lanes unicorns because they're that rare. So
there's hardly any in the city. Hardly any people use bikes in the city. They do, but not that many.
Really?
Not that many.
I mean, my experience, again, this is from probably the 80s, is, there were a lot of bike messengers and stuff. I guess that doesn't exist that much anymore because of...
No, but they don't use the lanes. They just use the street.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I'm saying. It's like,
yes.
they don't follow even the traffic flow. They're going the opposite direction. So I don't know what these bike lanes are supposed to do. So, maybe there's some nice place out somewhere on Long Island where you can put in a bike lane and it's not going to harm anything. It's like, whatever.
But they had those out already. They had bike lanes on Long Island back in the 80s and 90s.
Right.
They already had them.
It's an ideology. This is the thing.
Yes.
The ideology is we have to put in bike lanes because if you build it, they will come and we will get all these people and we'll be Copenhagen. But
yes, absolutely. 100%. So Mike says fines and licenses are meant to force compliance. Automation and kill switches are the same. It's not about environment nor safety, as neither really improves. It's ultimately about control. 1 or 2. Yes, I think that's 100% correct.
Yes.
Leela brings up a point you're talking about. She says, what about we that are over the hill and can't run on our legs and feet everywhere? Yes, right? What if you can't do that? What if you need a driver? What if you need a car? I think it's a valid point, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll give you an example in New York City, which is they've shut down streets, like actually closed off streets. Like you cannot drive on the streets. So there are people who are elderly and there are people who have some ADA issues and they're suing because they can't get the vehicle that they need to get where they need to go. And again, it's all in service of this ideology that cars are bad. And if we close down roadways, that's a good thing, regardless of whatever the other ridiculous consequences are that happen. So, absolutely right. It's just absolutely right. And this is the arrogance of people, which is everybody should live like me. I'm a young guy and I can ride a bike and you should live like me. Well,
yes.
No, thank you.
Well, Snoke agrees with your idea of people being upset. He's talking about Iowa. He says even small towns in Iowa are making hundreds of thousands of dollars per year with speed cameras. So it became an election issue and they shut them off faster than something in a restaurant. So yes, people got mad about election. They shut them all down. I see. You're exactly right. That's what happened.
Okay. All right. So I'll tell you something else about Iowa. There's a little town in Iowa called Waverly, Iowa, and they did a road diet in the middle of town. So this is not just New York or some, East Coast liberal city or whatever, wherever you think these things are. It's, in the middle of Iowa, in Waverly, Iowa, they did a road diet and reduced the number of lanes through the middle of town. So, and that was the only lane it was the only roadway that went from one side of the town to the other because it was a bridge across, I guess there's a river there or something like that. So I mean, again, and I think there was an election that they threw a bunch of people out of office because of this. But this is not just happening, it's happening all over the country. That's why I was saying. That's why I brought that up.
So let me grab Joseph says financialization of the economy is end stage of empires. Sadly, that is correct. That's why I'm worried about us. We are financialized far too much than we ever should have been. Joseph, you're correct. Thank you for that. Thank you for being a member. But this piece I want to bring up for you, Jay. He says, I hate driving. Robert, I'm sorry. Says, I hate driving in Manhattan. Delivery trucks park everywhere. They aren't supposed to. True. Blocking lanes. Yes. There are no right turn signs where it would appear the intersection was designed for right turns. Yes. And they're incorrectly engineered fire hydrants everywhere. Yep. Taking up about 100 million parking spots. Yes. So I was trying to drive in Manhattan. Why did I bring this up? Because the other part you bring up is the no right on red turns.
Mm-hmm.
New York City, you can't do it. It's against the law in New York City.
You've never been able to. Right. The only place in the country that got a carve out.
Yes. Say it again.
Only place in the country that got a specific carve out when the federal government, for the environment, okay, for saving fuel, kind of mandated and forced this on everybody and said, you have to adopt this in all the states. We get a little history of that. It was in the western states. California had right turn on red, okay, and then other states in the west. California was the very first state to do it, and then most of the East Coast did not have it. So it was either you can right turn on red if there was a sign, or you just couldn't do it at all. And so in the 70s, during the gas crisis, the federal government said, one way we can save gas is to not have people idling at intersections at red lights for no reason, okay, which is a reasonable policy. And so they kind of mandated over a number of years and a couple of infrastructure bills that that states had to adopt this, and then they could restrict it if it was necessary at a particular intersection. That's the right policy. Right policy is if it needs to be restricted at a particular intersection because of either sight lines or because of too many pedestrians at a particular time of day or whatever, perfectly fine to restrict right turn on red, but it should not be a blanket ban. And that's what we're seeing around the country now, which is people want to emulate New York. And so just to get back to New York, so when New York adopted it, New York City lobbied to get an exemption so they did not have to have right turn on red. I will give an admission here. I have gotten very few traffic tickets in my entire life, maybe 3, okay? Moving violations, okay? One of them was turning right on red in Staten Island. And I did not know that restriction extended. It was not too long after I got my driver's license. And I knew Manhattan. I knew you couldn't turn right on red in Manhattan. I didn't know that extended to all 5 boroughs. And cop was sitting there and specifically ticketing for people coming off the highway and making a right turn off the ramp. And so,
all right. So
I personal experience with this.
I got one more for you. This is Brian. Brian says, in my town, they've lowered speed limits to 25 miles an hour from 35 to 40 through forests and even after shoulder widening. So he doesn't want to spend on patrols. I try to follow the limits, but the tailgaters are common. Now, I bring this up for 2 reasons. One, this sounds crazy to do it even through forests and wide shoulders, right? But okay. But the other piece is you bring up the idea of 20 is plenty. Mm-hmm. And New York City has already gone 20 is plenty. Right. It's already gone there. And it's nothing but a disaster. Now we have people fighting everything. The city now has a bigger issue, which is collections. Mm-hmm. Because they do so many tickets. They do over $200 million a year in tickets. They only collect over 100. So there's a lot of people who are going into collections having problems. So I don't know. What do you think about this lowering speed limit stuff constantly?
Okay. Well, again, I think we talked about this a little bit, which is that lowering the speed limit.
Yeah, but I meant the 20 for that's plenty piece. I'm sorry, I should have been clearer. That's what I was talking about, that part.
Right. Well, again, it's an ideology. It's a new, oh, that's going to be the new thing that's going to solve every problem and whatever. We just got to lower the speed limits to 20 miles an hour. Well, then it'll be 15, and then it'll be 10, and then it'll be 5, right? So where's the limit? Okay, there is no limit. There's no limiting factor in this because and again, simply lowering the speed limit does not make traffic go slower. People constantly conflate lower speeds with lower speed limits. Okay, they are not the same thing. And so unless you have an incredible amount of command and control and create an incredible speed trap, which is what New York City is doing, which is building a road for people to feel comfortable driving 35 miles an hour and then setting a 20-mile-an-hour speed limit on it, it's an entrapment. It's a speed trap. That's the definition of a speed trap. And so, again, it's the arrogance of government and government officials that think they can have enough command and control and get everybody to comply. And I know that there are probably some people out there that are like, well, it's safer or whatever, it's New York City. It's like, maybe on some little side street somewhere, 20 miles an hour is fine. And probably you're not going to go much faster than anyway, because you can't. Okay. But on the big boulevards and on, Fifth Avenue, 20 miles an hour is not going to fly because people are just simply not, especially when it's not in the middle of rush hour. So So
Absolutely.
it's not realistic. It's not fair to people. And again, people in New York City should rise up.
Absolutely. All right. So let me ask, Jay, before we wrap this up, is there anything I missed? Something we should bring up? Something you want to talk about that you're doing? Anything you want to bring up before we wrap this up?
No. Did we talk about like where the National Motorists Association came from? Like where we started?
No, tell us about that.
Yeah. I've done so many interviews today. I can't remember. So we're the organization that was created to help fight the 55-mile-an-hour national speed limit. For people who don't remember that, again, during the gas crisis of the 70s, the federal government, the Nixon administration actually, had this bright idea that, if we force everybody to go no more than 55 miles an hour, we'll save a lot of gas. And of course, the safety scolds, they love that because, 55 miles, slower is better and it's always safer and whatever. It's not true. But, and so that led to a lot of pain and suffering, especially in Western states, and a lot of ticketing and just, ridiculous. So our organization, way before I was involved, began to fight this. That was the genesis of this organization. And then when we won that fight in the 90s, then the organization sort of took on other things and said, there's a lot of other issues out there in terms of the freedom to drive and the government being a bully all over the place. So, we're gonna take on some of these other things. That's kind of how we.
Kim says those 55-mile-an-hour people called Nixon lovers. I didn't know that. I never heard that before.
I don't know. Yeah,
there we go. I hope Kim's right. She could have made that up and be teasing us, but I think she's telling the truth. It sounds funny. That's very good. That's very good. Right. Well, I am glad that happened. I appreciate that you guys were around. I'm glad you're doing what you're doing. And guys, if you want to follow him, please follow him at Motorists on Twitter. On the web, check him out at motorists.org. Kim, by the way, says, no, it's true.
Join the National Motorists Association. It is incredibly inexpensive for everything that you get. Join the fight to preserve your driving freedoms. We help out in New York City. We help out all over the place, and you be part of the Freedom Army. The cost of membership for a year is the cost of a tank of gas. So maybe half a tank in New York City.
Maybe half a tank here. Yeah,
right, exactly.
Half a tank of gas in California, New York. Right, exactly. There we go. See, that's all it is.
It's $42 a year. It's nothing. So join us because A, we need your help and we need you to be part of the movement. So, and if you like what we're doing, join us. And then help Larry out and become a super chat person.
I love that. All those are good. Do all the cool things, but no matter what, please follow him. And also please click the like button. I appreciate it. Jay, it was great talking to you. I appreciate it. For everybody else here, I will be on tomorrow. I'll be doing something with probably the Joe Rogan podcast, I assume, because I think he's talking to Trump today. So if it comes out tomorrow, I'll talk about that tomorrow, probably around 7 or something else, but I will be on tomorrow at 7. I will not be on on Sunday, but I will be on Monday. Either way, you know what to do. Once this is over, come back on and put a comment, because you know who likes the comments after it's over? Mr. Rhythm, Al Gore. Al Gore, Rhythm, loves that. So please do that to keep him happy. I will see you all very soon.